Being recorded. I'll now turn the call over to your host, Senator Portman.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Last Friday, I had a great visit to Cincinnati Crane and Hoist. I had the honor of presenting this veteran-owned business, small business in the Cincinnati area, Harrison, Ohio, an award from the Commerce Department. It's their Export Award. And I also got to meet with the employees, talk to them about various issues, and it was just very encouraging to see a guy who started a business in his garage end up being now an international business that's growing in Harrison, Ohio. The guy's name is Tony Strobel, and he exemplifies the American dream. And we talked also a lot about trade policy, as you can imagine, because he's in the steel business and he likes what we're doing on the level of the playing field in terms of foreign steel products. On healthcare, as you know, I've made my concerns very clear about the current healthcare system. I think the Affordable Care Act has not been good for Ohio. Premiums and deductibles have skyrocketed, particularly for middle-class families and for small businesses. This has been a huge problem. I had some constituents come in today, and a guy and his wife told me about their premiums going up. More importantly for them, if their deductible is so high, it's like they don't have insurance. And they're in one of those counties, that's having a tough time because insurers are leaving. So it's not just that Ohio has suffered from a nearly doubling of our healthcare premium costs just in the last 4 years, 82% to quality care and protect the most vulnerable, particularly because we expanded Medicaid. And so I've been very clear about that. I've expressed my concerns about the existing healthcare system, but also about the proposal that came out of the House and the proposal that came out of the Senate initially. I don't think they were responsive to what we have going on in Ohio, which is not just expanded Medicaid, but an opioid epidemic, and Medicaid is a significant payer for that. But I've rolled up my sleeves, and I've worked to find common ground with my colleagues to try to come up with positive solutions that are in the best interest of Ohio and our country, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I have said consistently that I support repeal and replace, and I'm not giving up on doing both of those things. I don't think it's appropriate just to repeal. We've also got to put a replacement in place to help deal with the very issues I just talked about. Over the past year, as I said, we've had a lot of destabilization of our insurance market in Ohio. That's true around the country. Ohio's been hit harder than most states, though, I will say. When the 2015 law was passed, we had at least 2 insurance companies providing insurance, writing insurance in every Ohio county. Most counties now have multiple insurance companies. We've gone, by the way, during that period from 16 insurance companies in Ohio to about 10. And again, 19 counties now have no insurance company in the individual market, 27, only 1 insurer. And so, there's an urgency here for Ohio. And the best approach, I think, is to continue to work with my colleagues in the hopes that we can come together around a replacement plan that actually works to address these problems. These are real problems, and we can't ignore them. With regard to Backpage, some of you saw we had an important development in the effort to stop Backpage.com from selling underage girls online, along with Claire McCaskill, who was my partner in the initial investigation we did. Now Tom Carper is the ranking Democrat on my subcommittee. We made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. We believe there is sufficient evidence to warrant this criminal review based on the work that we have done in the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. And we'll see what happens with these court cases. In the past, when victims or even state authorities have tried to bring actions against Backpage, they have evaded responsibility by saying that they didn't write the ads for sex. They just published them, and that gave them the protection of a law called the Communications Decency Act. We know now that their claims that they weren't involved aren't true. In fact, our investigation found out that Backpage.com knowingly facilitated criminal sex trafficking of vulnerable women and young girls, and then tried to cover up the evidence of these crimes. We also know that the Communications Decency Act, should be changed to keep this kind of behavior from happening. And so, what it now says, in essence, if a company like Backpage publishes an ad someone else gives them, they're not liable. So I am working with a bipartisan group of members to say that, yes, we support the intent of the Communications Decency Act to protect online publishers. It's well-intentioned. but it was never intended to protect those who knowingly violate the law, and particularly those who facilitate illegal conduct like sex trafficking of vulnerable kids and women. So our legislation, we are moving on. We hope to introduce it soon, and we're working with folks on both sides of the Capitol and both sides of the aisle. It has a successful passage. Some of you may have seen that the algal bloom forecast for Lake Erie was just put out by the NOAA folks. That's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's concerning to me because the NOAA prediction is that there will be a significant harmful algal bloom, particularly in the western basin of Lake Erie, which is the Toledo area, this summer. My legislation, which is authorization legislation for harmful algal blooms, provided NOAA with the congressional direction to produce these forecasts and the funding for it, and its continued monitoring in the Great Lakes is really important. So I'm glad we have the legislation in place and that we're getting these predictions and they're more accurate, but it also means to me that we got to do more to protect Lake Erie. So I am continuing to fight for full funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Back in April of this year, we fought hard to get full funding again for this current year. We were successful at that. During the Obama administration last year, we had to fight for an additional $50 million that was cut in the President's budget. This go-around, the President's budget zeroes it out, and we cannot allow that to happen. So we're continuing to work on a bipartisan basis to protect this important initiative because it does have significant impact on the harmful algal bloom problem as well as invasive species and pollution in Lake Erie, and it's been a successful private-public partnership. Again, although we've made progress to reduce harmful algal blooms, not just in the Great Lakes but in other saltwater and freshwater bodies, we do need to reauthorize the legislation regarding harmful algal blooms, and Senator Nelson and I are in the process of doing that. We're going to reauthorize the legislation here in the next month or so, we hope. New legislation, a couple of bills I want to mention briefly. One is I introduced what's called the Migratory Birds of America's Conservation Act with my colleague Ben Cardin. This is legislation that authorizes a current program, a Fish and Wildlife Services program, to protect the habitat and populations of about 380 bird species that migrate north through Lake Erie each year. And again, it's a program that's a very successful public-private partnership. $58 million in federal grants have been used to leverage about $220 million in non-federal funds. And I think it's important that we support conservation efforts like this. Lake Erie is one of the most popular destinations for bird watching in the country. In the Toledo area alone, it's estimated that the economic impact of birding is about $40 million a year. So I think this is, again, a good example of a program that's working. We've got to be sure it's not just reauthorized, but has funding in the budget. I'm also introducing legislation later this week with Senator Tim Kaine, who co-chairs and co-founded the Career and Technical Education Caucus with me, which is about skills training. We have introduced a couple other bills this year focused more broadly on CTEs and how to strengthen the career and technical education in Ohio and around the country. This legislation is about the infrastructure debate and what can we do to ensure that we have a skilled workforce to invest as we invest in our nation's infrastructure. It's one of the concerns that's been raised with us repeatedly. We had a conference here in Washington about a year ago on this issue. The bottom line is businesses in construction, energy, manufacturing, other infrastructure-related industries are struggling to fill jobs that they've got open right now, and if we get an infrastructure package through Congress this year, we're going to need a much more robust CTE approach to this to ensure that we have the job skills we can close that gap. So the legislation is called the BUILDS Act, and it promotes industry or sector partnerships to improve worker training, retention, advancement related to infrastructure. It also provides resources to post-secondary institutions, apprenticeship programs, job training institutions, to help better align their curricula with the in-demand infrastructure-related jobs. So I think this is an interesting opportunity to be bipartisan, but also to work with folks in the private sector and with regard to the building trades. The AFL-CIO building trades came in to our conference and talked about the importance of this skills training. Opening up to questions on anything.
Senator, this is .com. You seem to be suggesting that there's still hope for repeal and replace. Yet the votes are not there for cloture on that, and the votes are not there certainly on a straight repeal. So explain this apparent optimism that you have on this.
Well, I don't know where the votes are on everything because it depends, obviously, on what it looks like. And as you know, Steve, I've been working hard with my colleagues to try to improve the House bill initially, and then the Senate bill, which came out, and I think in some respects was better than the House bill, in some respects it was worse. And we've made some progress. You know, we most recently got the $45 billion for opioids, which is a mental health and substance abuse treatment fund. It would be unprecedented and does help. That's based on the $4.5 billion a year that the expanded population uses in opioid treatment. And concern that a number of those expanded Medicaid people might lose coverage. So it's in addition to whatever we do in terms of...
I understand everything that's been done here, but again, from what I can tell, there aren't 50 votes.
Well, we don't know yet because the law is still being improved. Glide path is something that I help get in as well. That's a 4-year glide path now. In fact, the first year no change at all. There's no glide path in the House bill. We now know that this legislation does lower premiums. We're going to know more when we get to the Congressional Budget Office 4. We don't have that yet. We're told in the next 24 hours. We were told it was going to be ready by now, but it isn't. We've got to see that. We've got to see, what's going to happen in terms of access and cost. We think there's about $200, maybe $250 billion room between the House bill and the Senate bill to help additionally on these tax credits that you and I have talked about. This is getting people off of expanded Medicaid and onto private health care, but helping them with their premiums and deductibles. And there might be some interesting ways to work on that with a Medicaid supplement to the tax credit. So it's all still in process, and I think it's premature, frankly, to go to a vote which simply focuses on, repeal. I think our job is to do both repeal and replace.
Senator, when President Trump says let Obamacare fail, is that good for Ohioans?
Well, when did you say that?
He said that this morning.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to know what context he said it in because there's been a lot of back and forth.
But he said it several times actually. But he said let Obamacare fail and we're not going to own it.
But then after that he has said we need to be sure and have a replacement because we're responsible for ensuring that people have access to affordable care.
Actually, Senator, he didn't say that. He said let it fail. It's, and then let's see what happens with Democrats coming crawling back.
Yeah, and I'm just saying in the past he has said that and then said after that let's replace. So I was just wondering what the context was. Look, I mean, I know what's happening in my state, which is we have a lot of counties that are without an insurance company. They are bare, as the insurance market says. In other words, if you want to get policy in one of those counties, you got to move. And that's small businesses. It's a lot of middle-class families. It's the exchange broadly, but it's really the individual insurance market. And we know what the cost has done. I mean, we know they've gone up dramatically. So I think just repeal is going to make that problem worse because a lot of what we hear is that these companies are leaving and therefore there's less competition and there are higher costs. One, because of the structure of the Affordable Care Act, it really doesn't work. And, we've talked about this before, but we have to change the way the Affordable Care Act works in terms of providing for an insurance market. You can't have, for instance, just open enrollment so people, when they get sick, sign up for insurance. When they get well, they get off insurance. That doesn't work. And we know that. And then second, there's a lot of uncertainty, not just about that issue, but the issue of whether these subsidies are going to be there in the future. That's the cost sharing, the CSRs, cost sharing.
Senator, this is Deirdre from the Inquirer. Can you clarify? Would you be a no vote?
Let me just continue this. My concern is that if you just allow that to fail, that it will hurt people in Ohio as compared to having a replacement, which will actually provide people the ability to get some insurance coverage, one, where there's none now, but also have some competition and to get the market together where you can get rates down. So that's the goal I've had all along, Steve. I'm not suggesting that's easy to do. We've seen that, and some will say the votes aren't there, but we don't know what the final product is. We don't know what the congressional budget score is still. We're still in that process, and that's where I am. I mean, you guys may know where the votes are. I'm not sure, because people will say different things depending on what the substance is, I hope, because that's what they should focus on. That's what I'm focused on. What is the policy, and how can I play a constructive role in coming out with a better solution for Ohio?
Well, Senator McConnell said he's going to move ahead with a vote on straight repeal. Are you going to be a no on the motion to proceed on that?
I hope he won't, and I don't know that he's made that decision yet. I know he had a press conference today after our lunch meeting where he said that I wasn't there, but apparently he did not set a time frame for that. He apparently said, I haven't made any final decision, so I'm hopeful we won't be in that position.
Okay, well, if he does, how will you vote? If he does put that up, because that's the expectation right now. So how would you vote if he does move ahead with that?
Well, I'm not for just repealing. I think we ought to repeal and replace, but it's a little more confusing than that, Deirdre, and you and I have had this discussion before. It's never quite as simple as yes or no, even though I know that's what you maybe wish for. But, I mean, bottom line is, if he does a motion to proceed, it's on the House bill. That's the bill that's before us, and so it will not actually be on repeal. And then he's saying he would offer an amendment on repeal. But under Votorama, as you know, anything can be offered, including the BCRA. And my concern about following that approach is not that we won't have hundreds, maybe several hundred votes on all sorts of things, which is good to have debate and votes, but that we're not ready yet to have that vote on the replacement option because we're in the middle of, frankly, negotiations to improve it. So my hope is that we can follow what we had previously agreed to, which is to get the congressional budget off the score. Let's see, what it says about coverage, about cost, about how much money is available to help supplement some of these. I mentioned the tax credits. So to answer your question, I have to say I'm not for only repeal. I'm for repeal and replace, which is consistent with where I believe our party has been, and others who don't like the Affordable Care Act, is not just repeal it, but we got to replace it with something better. Otherwise, again, in Ohio, my fear is a lot of people are going to not just have higher premiums and deductibles, they're going to be left without insurance options.
But you voted in 2015 for a straight repeal in a bill that passed the House and the Senate, the Jack Tory, and the bill was vetoed by President Obama. I mean, you're on record for saying I can vote for a repeal. Now you seem to be saying a not.
Yeah, well, I'm on record forever saying repeal and replace, as you know, and I've never used the word repeal without replace. I challenge you to find that anywhere, including my conversations with you, Jack. And
right.
Since that time, what has happened? We've gone from a situation in Ohio where we've got, frankly, plenty of competition who are saying that if there is not more certainty provided to the insurance market, we're going to walk too. So it's a very different situation. The circumstances have changed altogether for Ohio. I can't speak to all other states, but as you know, we are a state that has been hit particularly hard, and the Affordable Care Act has not worked. And I know there are plenty of Democrats who agree with that and would like to fix it. And we have different ideas about how to fix it, but we have an ability, in my view, not just to repeal, but also to replace.
Senator, going back to Deirdre's question, and since you brought up the House bill and you said that what McConnell would bring to the floor is not straight repeal, but the House bill, would you vote then to proceed on the House bill?
Well, I would if there was a agreement to move forward with the replacement that we talked about. All I was saying to Deirdre was that technically all we have on the floor to move to is the House bill. So that's what you do. Whether it's the motion to proceed. So whether you're talking about an amendment on repeal only or an amendment on the better health care plan, or whether it's amendments on how you deal with Medicaid and the glide path, that all starts with motion to proceed to the House bill, because that's the only thing that's available to proceed to. Does that make sense? That's under.
No, for all of us mortals, this doesn't seem to make sense. I'm trying to.
Can I just follow up real quick? So,
go ahead.
So if there is no agreement move forward with the Senate bill that you have talked about, the replacement bill that's in draft form now, and instead McConnell is making it fairly clear that we'll go to straight repeal. Would you vote no on the motion to proceed to the House bill?
Well, I would not support just having a repeal vote if that's all that he's going to offer, but I don't think that's what will happen. I think he will see that, we're making progress and that we need to have a replacement as well. So that's what I hope happens here.
Senator, this is Schulte at WKSU. On the substance of a replacement, do you see any place for a proposal to expand Medicare, to make it younger age, or to offer it in some of these counties where options are disappearing? Do you see a role for it, kind of an incremental?
Yeah.
Yep.
Still there?
Yep.
Yeah. I have not heard that come up in the context of this debate. I have heard it, more broadly with regard to health care, that you would take Medicare and essentially take it below age 65 for people who are perhaps no longer working but not 65 yet. It's an interesting idea, but I think this will be focused really on the Affordable Care Act, and then because the Affordable Care Act expanded Medicaid, it obviously gets into the Medicaid area. And for some of those people, these health credits, the tax credits we talked about earlier, will be extremely helpful, because if they are low-income Ohioans and they are retired but not yet 65, they will have access. And that's one of the things that I've been working on, is to provide them help with the so-called long-term stability fund to help on their deductibles and their premiums, to get them the tax credit. And then for some people to be able to actually help further with regard to a Medicaid match that's separate from the traditional Medicaid program. And I can give you, more detail on that. We've got numbers on it. We've been working hard on that. And some people will be, very pleased to have that, because they cannot get health care with their employer because they're perhaps no longer working. They can't afford health care in the individual market, so they need this help. And, yet they will be in a program, a private health care plan that actually might provide them better options, because, as you know, there are a lot of insurers, or a lot of health care providers now who are not taking Medicaid. There are even some providers not taking Medicare because the reimbursements are relatively low. Whereas this plan that I'm talking about would have higher reimbursements. So the theory is that they would be able to have access to health care like you do, and I do, through the private sector, where they might be able to get better results. So anyway, that's a long way of saying, no, I don't think the Medicare idea is there, but there are other ideas to try to help those same people who are, again, older, but not yet 65.
Senator Portman.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and feel free to follow up with calls on this. Again, my hope is that we do move forward. I'm not giving up on repeal and replace. I think we have a responsibility to put a replacement in place that works. I just want to be sure it works well for Ohio, and I think we've made progress on that, but there's more to do.
Thanks, everyone.
Senator Portman. Hello.